Greetings! Hey everybody, it's the Mega Cat. I do apologize for my long absence. A change in work schedule kind of screwed me. I wound up with a mess of a schedule and I'm sort of all over the place right now, so didn't have a lot of time. But I kept working and I do have a top 10 to give to you this week. Well, 2 weeks actually. First we're going to be doing numbers 10 through 4, and then the last 3 will be for a later date. But with that being said, let's move on to discuss the top 10s. Now, it is the month of summer. Well, the months of summer, as it were. Unless you live in Arizona like me, in which every month but the winter is summer. But we'll get that. Anyway, what we're talking about now is, those of you out of school or those of you with time off from work are probably wondering, what kind of games should I be looking into? That's why Mega Cat presents the top 10 games you should be playing this summer. This is my personal list and my recommendations based on my own experience. It will not include games I have not played, and it may include some games I have reviewed, so keep that in mind. That being said, we're going to go ahead and get started and roll on here. And I'm going to go ahead and start with, of course, number 10. Now, what would be my number 10? What could it be? MechWarrior 4. Specifically, the entire series, including all of its expansions, the what they call the Pirate Moon, or well, the Black Knight expansion, and the Mercenaries standalone game. Now, what is MechWarrior 4? MechWarrior 4, as you will see shortly, a mech combat game. Now, when I went to get video of this, the video recording system I used couldn't actually get it, so I had to get some video from online, and there will be a little credit for it up on the screen here in a moment, from a Dark Kevan. I apologize for borrowing his work, but unfortunately my recording software kept borking and would not record it properly. Anyway, the game itself is an expanded look at the simulation-style MechWarrior games that came out in the early 90s. The fourth in the series. It's, by all accounts, the most balanced, most well-designed, and most popular version of the series, if not the most, directly accurate to the lore. While it does have the mechs properly proportioned and they do use proper weaponry, there are some schools who believe the third game was the best of the group. Me, I think the fourth is the best, and I think it's certainly the most comprehensive of all of them, but that's my personal view. Now, that being said, I do feel that there are problems with the game, but it's nothing that can't be, addressed with, modern technology. Especially if you've got a good computer, it'll run on just about anything in the last 5 years. It can be played with a random joystick of your choice, a PC, Xbox controller. Pretty much whatever you want to use could be used for it. It has intense combat, has a surprisingly strong story. Both the original MechWarrior 4 Vengeance and the Mercenaries are a great play and do a lot of good work in giving you branching story paths. More so the Mercenaries than the original, but there's still some branches to go on. It's also one of the most intense combat games you'll ever find in terms of mech combat. Oftentimes the screen is swarming with bad guys, and you and your team, which can be up to 8 AI-controlled backups, can work as a coordinated team and just rip the enemy apart with gauze cannons, laser, missiles, whatever you want. And they explode in spectacular fashion. While the MechWarrior customization in this is not quite as expansive as it was in the second game, it's much better than the third game. And because each mech has unique layouts and control systems, in that you can, map the weapons to whatever groupings you like, it's entirely possible to set up a unit that has nothing but missiles and lasers, and yet be deadly effective, just by setting them up to barrage your enemy with repeated attack. It's all a matter of personal preference, and the game lets you build your unit and build your armory as whatever way you choose, and features many different areas, from Arctic battlefields to desert landscapes to all kinds of stuff. For mech fans, there's nothing better, and I recommend it if your PC is even 5 years old, it still runs. Moving on. Now, what's next on the list, I wonder? Well, here we go. Guilty Gear XRD. Guilty Gear is a long-running series, So if you haven't heard the name before, it's understandable. You know, it's not the biggest name in the world of fighting games, but it certainly is one of the most wondrously over-the-top and extreme versions of a fighting game you'll ever see. Guilty Gear XRD was released this last year. I think it was actually released this year in like February. And it's of course made by Arc System Works, published by Axis Games. And it's essentially a 2D fighter with absolutely insane characters and a story so complex that it really is kind of nuts. I mean, seriously, look at this crap. Anyway, but you aren't here for the story. It's a fighting game. This isn't Mortal Kombat. Story doesn't matter here. Beating people's brains in matters here. Okay, all joking aside, it actually does have a complex and interesting story. And the cast of characters makes the story engaging, even if it is pretty insane. Still, the aesthetic, the art style, everything about this version of Guilty Gear makes it, in my opinion, the best version of the series. Although, admittedly, it's in a close tie for the Accent R series that came out on PC a while back. Still, because it's available on PS4 and Xbox One, it's the newest and the first next-generation game of the series. So, you can expect that this is going to look better, play tighter, and be as hardcore as possible. And I mean that seriously. It is flat out amazing. Also, the art design is very unique. While it looks like a 2D animated cartoon, it's actually running a specialized 3D engine. The characters themselves are all designed with 3D models, but have a unique system of shading that makes them appear as if they're 2D characters. Add some neat special effects and great special sound work, as well as an awesome cast of very weird characters like I Know here. I mean, seriously, Rock and Roll Witch. How can that not be awesome? And you have a game that just screams insanity and fun, while at the same time being a complex, extremely well-designed fighting game with a great set of different complex systems, counters, rolls, dodges, special techniques. Basically anything that you see in a modern fighting game, this game does it and does it better in most cases. I've actually been playing this way more than any other fighting game, even Mortal Kombat, simply because it's so amazingly deep, yet the characters are so engaging I never get bored. Plus, it's entirely possible to play this game as a good number of characters. Its current roster is something like 20 plus. And each character is unique. There's no characters that mimic each other. They all have unique features. Even those that do have similar fighting styles have enough diversity that no two characters will play the same. I mean, yeah, Soul Bad Guy may be the Ryu of the group, but he's also very different from your standard Shoto clone. So, it's definitely worth it to look into this and consider it worth the effort. I honestly don't know if it's the game for everybody because it is somewhat of a difficult game to master, but fighting game aficionados, this is the game you want if you don't already have it. It's one of two games I've been playing in the fighting genre recently because, to be honest, Street Fighter sort of lost my interest. Plus, I mean seriously Capcom, PS4 port, what the hell? Anyway, that's not what we're here to talk about. That's a video for another time. But what we are here talking about is, why this game is worth playing. And if you're looking for a fighting game to play with friends, there are few games as awesome as this. Plus, its visual style and incredible artwork make it worth playing just to watch it in action. Now, this is probably going to be one of the games I eventually do a full review on when I have enough understanding of all of it to play it to the end and get all the details. But for now, if you're a fighting game fan, check it out. Anyway, moving on to the next game in the list. Next game in the list is yet another fighting game. And it's one I've actually talked about before, but I never went in depth. That's right, Killer Instinct. Now, Killer Instinct, few games are as revered in the fighting game world as, say, Street Fighter or Mortal Kombat. But there was one that was legendary in the 80s and 90s, well, 90s, for its amazing combo system and arcade graphics. That game is Killer Instinct. Now, when you boil it down, Killer Instinct is one of the best games when it comes to just out-and-out raw fighting combat. It's not a slower-paced, methodical game like Mortal Kombat or Street Fighter. This game is all about getting in and getting the combos. And it's beautifully designed for that purpose. It's not perfect, make no mistake, it's not perfect. But it does do a good job of being one of the fastest, most intense, and most, complex fighting games out there, while still being surprisingly accessible to even a newcomer. And I mean that literally. Most fighting games have a learning curve that, well, to quote Yahtzee, is sort of like smashing your face against a brick wall. You might be able to get the basics, but to be of any real competition, you have to master such a minutia of specific details and skills, it becomes almost impossible to play. This game is completely different. It's possible for a new player to pick it up and actually be effective. I've actually had a first-timer who never touched an Xbox One controller in his life pick it up and was actually able to hold his own against me using my best characters. Now, that being said, if you're skilled, you will still have a decided advantage. But don't be surprised if your opponent suddenly manages to pull off some surprisingly long combos and just, wreck your crap. Every character in this game can do 10 to 20 hit combos without even trying. And what's even more interesting is that they all have unique fighting styles. For example, here you see Omen and Black Orchid. Orchid is a straight up rushdowner. All her moves are about getting in and comboing your face into bits. She has a multitude of awesome, complex combos that make her very effective. While Omen has a smaller range of combos, but all his combos link together very uniquely. He has a specific move that acts as a bridge between all his combos, literally breaking all the combos out together so that he can use one move to set up a repeat combo, and yet that also means that he's easier to combo break. Every character has their strengths, every character has their weakness, and I don't think I've seen a game in a long time that's quite as balanced as this game is. There are some characters that do seem to have, that are the meta right now. Glacius, Jago, Sablewolf. But it's still possible for anyone to play any character and with enough skill, or even with enough determination, be effective with them. Plus, this game has the best combos in the world. And the Ultras are some of the best around. Just flat out awesome. Like you see there. I just wrecked the entire stage and her face. And that's the thing. This is one of those games where, once you have a group of competitors around who really know their characters, it becomes flat out amazing how good the matches can get, how much of a back and forth they become. And it's like, here you see the ultra combo of my favorite character, Jago. And as he does it, even the music from the stage matches his movements. This game is as much about competition and skill as it is about fun. And that's what's most important in a game, is you should be enjoying yourself, and I love Killer Instinct. So, if you're a fighting game fan, there is no doubt that this should be on the list of everybody's, regular rotation. Fighting game fans, the king of combos is back. Now, number 7, Bloodborne and the Souls series. And first, let me apologize. I did not get any Dark Souls or Demon Souls footage for this game. I wanted to include some, but unfortunately I was having some trouble with recording it for some reason. However, the most recent game of the series, the spiritual sequel Bloodborne, is a continuation of the series by the series creator. And to be perfectly honest, yeah. I will be flat out honest. I did not like the Dark Souls series. I loved Bloodborne, though. And I mean this in the best way I can. I thought the lore of the Dark Souls series was some of the best lore ever made. Yet at the same time, I thought that the lore of the series was so inaccessible because of the game's insane difficulty. And that's just what I've experienced of it. I've played Demon Souls, I've played Dark Souls, I played Dark Souls 2, and a game has to be entertaining and playable to be considered worthy of my attention. And I did feel that Dark Souls and Dark Souls 2 failed on one account because they weren't playable in my eyes. The game's combat was simply too slow for my taste. That being said, it has a huge following for a good reason. It's not a bad game at all. And I just think that, there's some people who are going to like its combat style. There are others who won't, and I was one of those who didn't. Bloodborne, on the other hand, changed things up by making combat much more fast-paced, much more focused on quick slicing and, cutting and ripping and tearing. You weren't hiding behind a shield, you were diving in and smashing face. And you had a gun, too, which allowed you to use the gun's long-range ability as a counter move, so that if somebody tried to attack you, you could counter them and then get a vicious, visceral attack on them and do tons of damage. I think that for people who want a hard, rewarding, and challenging game, the Souls series will become an addiction, if you can get past its learning curve. For newcomers, I would recommend the recently released Bloodborne as a starting point, because it's not quite as cumbersome as Dark Souls. It's still difficult. In fact, some of the most difficult boss battles I've ever seen were in that game. But they're easier to match because the game's controls, combat, and overall style are simply faster, tighter, and more focused on offense than defense. Again, I think that there's an audience for both games, and I really do believe that people should look into these games if they want a challenge as opposed to the hand-holding of the modern game industry. But be warned, these games are extremely hard, so it's something to get into, but you're going to need to devote some serious time. Now, these are made by From Software, and it's a long series of games going back to the PS3. If you want to start with the Demon's Souls on PS3, the Dark Souls, which is multi-platform, or you want to go for the PS4 exclusive of Bloodborne, all of them are worth the gameplay if you're up for the challenge. They're some of the most difficult games out there, but they're also some of the most amazing. I can't say enough about Bloodborne, and it's actually encouraged me to go back and get back into Dark Souls. And while I still think the controls and combat engine needed to be reevaluated, I will not deny that the game's aesthetic, lore, and build, just structure as far as its level design, is amazing. Anyway, give it a try if you're in for a hard game. Might not be for everybody, but it's worth a look. Moving on. Now we go to the game that has addicted me, DBZ Xenoverse. Oh my god, I've lost so much time to this goddamn game. DBZ Xenoverse is one of those games that has more or less absorbed my life. I won't deny that I'm a huge DBZ fan. I'm a huge fan of the DBZ series. I'm a huge fan of its, long-standing combat. And I think that one of the biggest problems I've had with a lot of other games that had the DBZ label on them was that they either did something that didn't feel like DBZ, but, were really good fighting engines, Battle of Z, for example, or they were too DBZ, but they weren't good fighting engines. Budokai Tenkaichi, Ultimate Tenkaichi. Let me make sure I clear that up. This is something that feels like a mix somewhere down the middle. There's bits of Battle of Z, there's bits of Budokai Tenkaichi, there's the character customization of Ultimate Tenkaichi, and there's a combat engine that is simplistic, yet fast, energetic, and allows you to customize your character's abilities, which is awesome. You can also customize your character's appearance, pick from several different races, and there's even 3 different races that allow you to play as females, whereas the Namekian and the Frieza race, there's never been any indication in the series that there were females for them, so they aren't considered as canon. So you can play as a male and female human, male and female Saiyan, male and female Majin. Which, you can see my female Majin right here, the bubblegum superhero, apparently. And this is just one appearance you can give them. Each character has dozens of different outfits they can wear. You can give them different moves, level them up in different ways, make them glass cannons, super powerhouses, whatever you want. It's up to you, and that's what makes the game a lot of fun. Plus, it's online, which means you can play with friends, play with allies, play with random strangers if you want. And all the game's content is being released rapidly. They've already released several expansions to it, and more are on the way. In fact, they've even just released the expansion for the new Frieza movie coming out later this year, so if you want to get a head start on that, it's available. The game isn't perfect. It's certainly got its flaws, and if you're a fan of DBZ or superhero action, you'll definitely get a kick out of it, but if you're looking for a more deep fighting game, stick to Guilty Gear or Killer Instinct. This is not your bag. But overall, for anyone who wants an over-the-top action game or wants to feel like a real superhero with real superpowers, your boat has arrived. It's fast-paced, it's energetic, and it's the only thing I have as a downside is it can be a bit grindy for the upper-level characters. But overall, I still had so much goddamn fun with this game. Check it out if you're interested. Otherwise, let's move on. Metal Gear Rising number 5, The Revengeance. Okay, all joking aside, Metal Gear Rising Attack of the Stupid Name is one of the best action games ever made. It's what they call a spectacle fighter, depending upon how you look at it. I look at it as an action, over-the-top action game. But it is one of those games that drives me crazy. Why? Because this is your first boss. Giant Metal Gear Ray in your face, gonna kill you. And why is it so awesome? Because you kick his ass! I wish I was joking, but I mean seriously. You're fighting this thing with a freaking sword, cutting up its armor, slashing up its weapons. I mean, for crying out loud, you're taking down a Transformer essentially with a freaking knife. And you're doing it in style, baby. All while it tries to shoot you, blast you, eat you, step on you, squash you, cut you, and crush you. This game pulls no punches. When I first played it, I was shocked at how difficult it felt. But it is so unbelievably fun. Raiden really comes into his own in this game. Rescued from the scrappy heap of Metal Gear Solid 4, he finally gets his own game, and it is amazing. The Metal Gear series had lost me after number 4. They felt as if they'd become more cutscene than gameplay. Then I played Rising, and Metal Gear Solid 4 just didn't exist in my eyes. Seriously, listen to this music. Watch this action. Rules of nature, baby. I'm gonna freaking throw this thing. That's right. Watch me suplex a giant mecha. Yeah! And now I'm gonna cut him up. Arms apart and arms off. And this is just the first time you fight this thing. You actually fight him another time after this. And that's the first freaking level in the first 10 minutes. The only game that comes close is Bayonetta, and I still actually prefer this to Bayonetta. I know, heresy, some people are going to scream about that, but you know what? Bayonetta is a fantastic game. It just does not compete. And I'll show you another reason why here in a moment. So, just a hallway, right? Wait, what happened here?
Show yourself.
Very few games make you feel as awesome in gameplay as you do in cinematics. Oftentimes, your character in cinematics does things that seem absolutely absurd, and you just don't feel like you're on par when you're playing the game. To me, Metal Gear Rising was an exception. I actually felt as if I was just as awesome in the gameplay, especially once you've unlocked a lot of the moves. You feel just as awesome in the gameplay as you do in the cinematics. But what I'm showing you here is one of the second level bosses. And note I said one of. Here you fight the Blade Wolf, as he's lovingly called by the fans of the series.
You are.
But what I want you to listen to is the music.
Pretty simple thinking for such a mighty intellect.
I may analyze orders, but I may not disobey them. Should I disobey a direct order, my memory would be wiped. I must destroy you.
What good is an intellect if you can't use it?
Your taunting is pointless. Exterminate!
This game's soundtrack is amazing. Now, it has some of the best tracks in video game history in my opinion. Although admittedly it's all like, you know, heavy duty butt rock, so to speak. It works so perfectly well and is so well done in its genre that it just fits and it feels so good for the game. Among its top tracks are Rules of Nature, I'm My Own Master Now, It Has to Be This Way, which is the final boss fight theme, and there's many others interspersed without it. For a Hideo Kojima game, it does of course have the usual preachy cinematics and various, like, political diatribes, yet they don't detract from this game the way they did from Metal Gear Solid, because between all of that is just action after action after action. You don't feel like you're watching cutscenes after cutscenes to get 5 minutes of gameplay. You feel as if you're playing 40 or 50 minutes of gameplay to get a 5-minute cutscene. And it really does feel like it. Plus, the absurdity and silliness of this is actually pretty awesome. It's produced by Platinum Games, makers of Bayonetta, Vanquish, and so forth. And I honestly think it's their best work. I know there's some people who would argue, but to be truthful, I still think this is probably the best thing they produced. Though I will admit, Bayonetta 2 gave it a major run for its money. At the end of the day, this is a game for people who want an awesome action game. A game about an awesome cyborg ninja killing the crap out of everything that gets in his way. It's also worth it to look up the soundtrack on Amazon if you'd like to just get some awesome tunes for your iPod. Either way, this game is available on PC, Xbox, and PS3. So either way, get it for whatever platform you like. I think that if you like action, you're going to love this game, and it might just reinvigorate your love for the Metal Gear series by, changing the taste a bit. Anyway, time to move on to number 4. Now, number 4, Homeworld Remastered. I cannot tell you how much I wanted this game to exist. And I won't lie to you, and I won't argue with you that, the fact that it was remastered is some sort of masterwork. No. The fact that it was remastered is a glowing thank you to the fans of the genre. It's a way to say, we remember when it was good. A lot of people today argue that the real-time strategy genre has sort of like dropped off. And it has in certain ways. Some of the games just aren't as good as they need to be. But when you break it right down, this game was one of the best strategy games of all time when it originally came out. Now, upgraded and remade for modern systems, well, for a modern PC, I should say. If you have a high-end PC and you love the RTS stuff, this is your bag. There's few games out there that are as deep, as interesting, and as unique as this game. No 2D crap here. You're in a 3D world with 3D consequences. You can come from above, you can attack from below, you can be ambushed from all sides, you can have enemies swarming in all directions. It's a game that really is, the example, as it were, of what a good game needs to be. And the sad thing about it is that they could not get the Cataclysm game when they redid this, because that was the only piece missing. They got Homeworld 1 and Homeworld 2. And I mean, it is masterwork of recreation. So, if you're a fan of RTS, if you never played Homeworld before, or if you just want to recapture that, glowing time in your youth and reawaken the Homeworld nostalgia, it's back, it's on Steam, and it's worth a look. Few games are as good when it comes to RTS. And I know fewer games still that have as much power in their story or as their determination to preserve your characters. No game makes you feel a connection to the little men fighting for you as this game does. Definitely check it out, and that will conclude part 1. Now, this is going to be a 2-parter because this wound up being a little bit longer than I anticipated. So, that's the end of part 1. Part 2 will be coming around the 4th of July, and my review of the Arkham Knight will be here soon. I'm sort of gathering my data on the game because it is so goddamn big. But I'll be back with more stuff. The Mega Matt Cat will see you July 4th for the top 3 games you should be playing this summer. Peace.